Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to the Slumpbuster Fantasy Football Podcast with Aris Blakely, episode 9, recording here on Sunday, October 20th, 2019. Find us on all major streaming platforms. On today's episode, Aris helps you break down NFL Week 7, Patrick Mahomes injury and what that means to your starting lineup, and generally helps you bust a slump at the fantasy football halfway mark. Without further ado, welcome to our show.
Why, football gods? Why do you hate me so much? Man, the Chargers are going to give me a heart attack. That game was ridiculous. We will break it down in a second. But first, let's get to some news because I'm going to go cry myself to sleep tonight because, I posted a meme about this on our Instagram page. I don't know if you saw it or not, but it seems like every single Chargers game ends in the same fashion. Chargers are down. We have the ball. We need to score, whether it be a field goal, 7 points, 6 points, 8 points, doesn't matter. I think we have the most one-score games in the last 3 or 4 seasons. All of our games, except for the Dolphin game, was a one-score game. I mean, it's an eternal hell that I live in, and it's not fun. But let's get into some news. So this week was a very, very, very odd week. We had some people go off that were on your bench. Marvin Jones last week, he had a couple catches for 17 yards. This week, he had 10 catches, 93 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Like, he had 4 touchdowns in the last 11 games. And then he comes in here, boom, 4 touchdowns. Chase Edmonds, this guy. Cardinals just hate everybody, apparently. David Johnson's full go. He's going to play. Comes in, 1 play, sits the rest of the game, and then bam, Chase Edmonds takes over and has a day, 3 touchdowns. It was a bizarre week. It seemed like the first hour of football, there were no names scoring touchdowns, like literal no names. Like I was like, wait, who the heck is that? Don't know who that guy is. Zach Pascal? Who is Zach Pascal? Like what? So it was just, like I said, just a very odd week. It was weird. Let's run down some names real quick. Zach Pascal, 2 touchdowns. Did you start him? Jake Cameroon. Did you start him? I'm not even going to try to say this dude's first name. Olabisky Johnson, receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. CJ Ham, fullback. I hate it when fullbacks score because they usually take touchdowns away from your running back. Rhett Ellison. Like, come on. Like, what the heck? Cameroon was owned in 3% of leagues. Out of that list that I just said, he's the highest owned player in those no names that scored. And then Marvin Jones, we could give it to him. He's owned in 70% of leagues. Pretty good. But he was only started in 25% of the leagues. Chase Edmonds, 46% of leagues owned. Only 9% started him. Those 9% are super smart. Also, not only do we have a bizarre week of people scoring that were on your bench or not on a team at all, we had some big name people go down. Reigning MVP Patrick Mahomes is down. He dislocated his kneecap. 3 to 6 weeks is his time frame. Matt Moore can fill in decently, but I don't think he's going to have that offense is going to be as explosive as with Mahomes, obviously. Fantasy beast, not really game beast. Matt Ryan went down. Yes, he only had 2 points, so thank you for that, Matt Ryan. Awesome. I'm going to lose this week because you pooped the bed for me. He was seen leaving the stadium in a walking boot. He'll have an MRI on Monday to diagnose what's wrong with him. I'm going to say high ankle sprain, probably. That's going to be at least 4 weeks for them. Matt Schaub is their backup. Yes, Matt Schaub is still in the league. That was news to me when I saw Matt Schaub come in. This dude is like 95 years old. I think he was the Texans' second ever quarterback behind David Carr. So him being in the league is, good for him. He's making bank. Who else? Thielen went down. That's going to be a big one. If you're a Diggs owner, you have to start Diggs next week. It's a short week. They play on Thursday. Hamstring issue. Thielen says he's good to go, but after the first quarter, he didn't play the rest of the game. So I don't think he'll be ready by Thursday. And then Will Fuller injured himself. I kind of said that on a couple podcasts that's his season. That's how it goes. So we'll touch base on those when we get into the game breakdowns and waiver wire pickups and everything. But I do want to just say shout out to Andre. Players finally came out to play, and he's going to win this week. So good job, Andre. Yeah, I'm not, because I had Chase Edmonds and Marvin Jones both on my bench in that league. So thank you, you two. Thank you, Arizona, because I probably would have played Edmonds over Miles Sanders this week with Chubb on a bye if I would have known he was going to play. Like, that's why I have him on my team, is for a handcuff. But David Johnson was a full go. But you did not play him, so what the heck? Let's just get into some breakdowns. Rams went to Atlanta and throttled Atlanta. They won 37-10. Goff had 268, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, touchdown on the ground as well. Gurley actually had a really good day. He had 41 rush yards, 13 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. But what we like to see is the 19 touches. 19. He's finally getting a usable role. And then I was telling everybody on Twitter this morning, if you have a Ram, start him, because the Falcons' defense is terrible. And, yeah, they did not do so hot. Robert Woods, 5 catches, 80 yards. Cooks, 4 catches, 59 yards. Everett, he's going to be on the streaming radar now. 4 catches, 50 yards, 1 touchdown. Cooper Kupp, 6 catches, 50 yards. So we were looking forward to this terrible defensive matchup for the Rams' offensive weapons, and they did not deliver. Matt Ryan had 159, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He left injured. Devontae Freeman, 7 carries, 19 yards. Tried to pick a fight with Aaron Donald. I have no idea why. And if you watched the replay that they showed, Aaron Donald literally picked this man up off of his feet, grabbed him by his shoulder pads, and lifted this man in the air. Why would you want to fight somebody that can literally lift you up in the air? That makes no sense to me, but he got ejected because he threw a punch at Aaron Donald. If you've seen Aaron Donald shirtless, I would not mess with that man. If you have not seen him shirtless, just go look on Instagram. He flexes for everybody. Julio Jones had 6 catches, 93 yards, and Hooper continues to plead his case for best tight end in the league right now. 4 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Rams get another favorable matchup next week in Cincinnati. Falcons are going to lose again next week probably because they're going to be down their quarterback. But they face Seattle, which Seattle's a good team. Atlanta, not so much. So Julio Jones is going to downgrade. Hooper, I would say Hooper is going to maintain this level. Usually backups tend to love tight ends as safety blankets. And then Freeman, I'm sticking away from Freeman for this whole year. I was offered a trade for him earlier this year in another league, and I decided not to go with it. Next game, let's get into Vikings at Lions, which was actually a pretty good game. Vikings won this one 42-30. It was a good game until garbage time turnovers happened and whatnot. But Kirk Cousins, his receivers need to yell at him more often because he is on fire right now. 337 through the air, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Dalvin Cook is continuing his pace, 142 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs, though, granted, he didn't have a catch until Thielen got hurt, but he ended the day 7 catches, 142 yards. Vikings get Washington next week, so early week they play the Thursday game. Thielen more than likely will miss this game, so Diggs is a must start this week. Thielen did, however, save his day before he got injured. 1 catch, 25 yards, 1 touchdown, and then hurt himself on that touchdown catch rolling down. At first when he was like holding his wrist, so I thought he hurt his arm, but he ended up hurting his hamstring. So I would look for Diggs to step up. Rudolph had a touchdown today. He might be on a flex radar if Thielen sits. And then if you're in a super deep league, look for Irv Smith, their second string tight end, to be on the streaming radar as well. Matthew Stafford is Matthew Stafford. He had 364, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. They love to throw the ball, so typical game for him. Kerryon Johnson had 5 carries for 23 yards, left injured. We'll talk about him in a second. He did re-enter the game, but it was when they were in catch-up mode, so they ran J.D. McKissick for pretty much the whole second half, but he did have a knee brace on. Danny Amendola, 8 catches, 105 yards back from injury. I like him as a flex player. He's going to work that middle of the field, kind of fill that Golden Tate role. Golden Tate was a fantasy beast pretty much his whole stint in Detroit. So I like him in that role. Galladay, I don't know what happened to Galladay, but he had 1 catch for 21 yards. And then, as I said before, Marvin Jones Jr., 10 catches, 93 yards, 4 touchdowns. He has only finished with more than 100 yards once this year. 10 catches is a season high. 4 touchdowns is a career high for him. Last week, he had 17 yards. So I sat him. He's been highly inconsistent, more down than up this year. I don't expect this again from him. Actually, they play the Giants. I can see maybe a touchdown. Not 4 touchdowns, but I could see him scoring again. They have the Giants. So if you're bye week hurting, injury hurting, I'd fire him up as a flex just because they're playing the Giants, but only if you're in a bind. I wouldn't start him with confidence. I would be very cautious of that. Next game, Raiders 24, Green Bay 42. Aaron Rodgers manhandled the Raiders. We'll get to him in just a second, though. Derek Carr, 293, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Josh Jacobs, surprisingly very good. I didn't think he would be this good. That's why I passed him in all of my drafts. But he had 124 rush yards. He did get stopped at the goal line. He got helicoptered. It was pretty fun to watch. Glad he was okay from that hit because usually those hits could be pretty dangerous. But helicopter rides are always fun, so I love seeing when people just get whipped around like that. Darren Waller benefited from Tyrell Williams being out. Tyrell Williams might be out another week, so Waller fired him up as a surefire tight end. 7 catches, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns. So Jacobs, RB2, RB3, I'd play him. He's been more good than bad this year. And then Waller, this is the second time he's put up almost 130 yards this year. 2 touchdowns is a season high. So he's going to continue to benefit with or without Tyrell Williams in. Tyrell Williams does come back. It's going to take a slight hit to his numbers, but not too big. So I wouldn't worry with that. But he's going to be set it, forget it for the rest of the year because they already passed their bye week. Now let's get into Rodgers. 429 yards. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he added a rushing touchdown. He just had his way with the Raiders. This backfield, I thought it was going to be more of a committee based off of what Williams did last week, but Jones, 50 on the ground, 33 through the air, 1 touchdown, 16 touches. Jamal Williams, 3 yards on the ground, 26 through the air, 1 touchdown, 7 touches. I have Jamal Williams in the league. I'm going to keep him as a handcuff, possibly flex option going forward. MVS, though, everybody was fired up that he was going to play, and I was a little wary. But he did have 2 catches, not the best, but 133 yards and a touchdown. Jimmy Graham also benefited from Adams being gone, 4 catches, 65 yards. And a touchdown. When Adams comes back, expect both of them to go back to their normal roles when Adams was in, because Adams is going to come right back into his number 1 slot. And Graham's going to be, primarily just a red zone target going forward once he comes back. The Raiders have Houston, so it'll be a little bit of a tough matchup. But I still think Jacobs and Waller should be started in most cases. And then Green Bay, KC does have a beatable defense. So, go with all the normal people. Rodgers, start him. Jones, probably not your RB1, but more like an RB2. Williams is going to be a deep flex play. Valdez-Scantling, flex play. Jimmy Graham, if you're hurting at tight end, go ahead and fire him up. Don't expect a lot from him. I could see him catching a touchdown in that game if Adams isn't back. If Adams is back, I would probably not play either one of them. Next game, Cardinals 27, Giants 21. Battle of top 10 picks in Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones. This was a rainy affair. Kyler Murray did not have to do much. 104 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Like I said earlier, David Johnson, 1 rush for 2 yards. He started the game, first play of the game. They handed him the ball. He got 2 yards, and then they sat him. Don't know why. He practiced on a limited basis. Everything pointed to a full go for the game, and then they sat him. And if I would have known they would have sat him, I would have played Chase Edmonds because he had 126 rush yards, 3 touchdowns. Nobody else needed to do anything. That's why we don't have any receivers on here because nobody grossed more than 50 yards. Daniel Jones, 223, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. We can expect this going forward from him. Saquon looked like he re-aggravated his ankle injury, so I would just keep that in mind. Watch the waiver wire, watch the practice reports, because if he does sit, Wayne Gallman is going to come back and fill that role. He had a decent game filling in for him before he got the concussion. But Barkley had 72 yards and a touchdown. Ingram had a forgettable day, 1 catch for 6 yards. And then Golden Tate had a pretty decent day, PPR day, 6 catches, 80 yards. This is probably the stat line for Golden Tate going forward with or without Shepard. You can expect 70 to 80 yards that's probably his floor. And then his ceiling, he can have 150 yards, couple touchdowns. I mean, he's just so good after the catch that I wouldn't mind flexing him for the rest of the year. Cardinals get New Orleans next, and then the Giants get the Lions next week. That'll be an interesting matchup against the Lions. Cardinals, though, probably just Edmonds or Johnson going forward. New Orleans does have a pretty decent defense. Barkley, of course, you have to start him. Jones, Lions have a beatable defense, so I would probably start Jones if you have no other options or he's your best option. And then Golden Tate, you'd flex him. Ingram, tight end position is so wishy-washy. If he's your only tight end because you drafted him high like a lot of people did, you kind of have to start him. Next game, they were playing this in a swimming pool. 49ers, 9 points. You heard that, 9. Washington, 0. This was a defensive struggle just because every time I watched it, players were sliding around, no footing. Every time they stepped, a pool of water would splash up. Jimmy G, 151 yards through the air, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Tevin Coleman, 62 yards, but he had 22 touches. Breida had 35 yards on 9 touches. So Coleman is starting to take control of this committed backfield with the, 17 running backs that they freaking have in that backfield. The Niners do. They have Coleman, Breida, Mostert, and Wilson. Coleman is starting to take over that role. So fire him up, fire Breida up as a flex because they're still going to rotate them through. Jimmy G, you still can't really trust him just yet, so I would hold off on him unless he's your only option. And then Kittle had a terrible day, but so did every other ball catcher out there. 3 catches, 38 yards in this. It looked like they were playing in a hurricane, literally rolling around. Bosa had a sack, and then he did a slip and slide from the numbers. No, it's probably like the hash marks. From the hash marks to the sideline. That's how wet the turf was in Washington. So, I mean, you can't really expect that game going forward. Washington has a tough matchup next week in Minnesota. I probably wouldn't play any of those players. And then the Niners, this is going to be an interesting matchup. I'm going to text Juju and see what his thoughts are on this game because the Niners are playing Carolina. Carolina's offense is looking pretty good. Christian McCaffrey's doing extremely well. And then Carolina has a pretty solid, top 10 defense. But that Niners defense, they are stingy. We're going to talk about this with Juju during the week, kind of get his thoughts on that game because that's going to be an interesting game going forward. And like I said, Washington has Minnesota, so I would avoid that one. Saints go into the Bear House and dominated. Saints won 36-25. Most of that was in the 25 points was in the fourth quarter garbage time when the game was pretty much away. Teddy Two Gloves, 281 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I feel bad for this guy because even as well as he's playing, the moment Drew Brees is healthy and wants to play, he is playing. However, the Saints are going to have a pretty interesting offseason. Brees will be 41. Taysom Hill, I'm not too sure how long he's on contract for, but Teddy Bridgewater is going to be a free agent. Do they let him walk? Do they try to trade him over the offseason? What are they going to do? They already signed him. He's the richest backup in the league. Everybody's saying he's the heir apparent. But will he want to sit behind Drew Brees again? He's undefeated right now in relief duty. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, over the offseason. Latavius Murray, I told a couple people to sit him just because it's the Bears defense at home, but that Bears defense at home can only do so much if their offense doesn't help them out. Latavius Murray had 119 rush yards, 2 touchdowns. Michael Thomas had 9 catches, 131 yards. Saints get Arizona next week, so Murray, if you have him, keep him and just monitor the health of Kamara going forward because that's a pretty solid matchup for them. I could see them winning that again. And then they have bye week after that. My thought is they play Atlanta the week after their bye. I think that's going to be when Drew Brees comes back, and then everybody elevates on that team with Brees coming back. Now, the Bears, Trubisky had 251, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, pretty much all in garbage time. Allen Robinson, 10 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. And then, like I said before, this backfield is stay away from it unless it's a PPR league because Tariq Cohen had 10 rushing yards, but he saved the day with 9 catches. That's 10 points right there for 19 yards. It's another point right there. So, he had a decent flex PPR day. But standard-wise, yeah, that's not too good. So PPR, probably flex him, but if it's standard, yeah, just avoid that backfield altogether. They get my Chargers next week, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, Chargers look terrible. They can't tackle anybody. So, heck, maybe Trubisky looks like Aaron Rodgers this week. I won't go on a rant this time about the Chargers. Next game, Ravens 30, Seattle 16. Pretty decent game. It was fun to watch. Ravens, the defense pretty much kept them in this game. They stopped Seattle, which I didn't think they were going to be able to do. But Lamar Jackson had a terrible quarterback day. 9 for 20, 143 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But he saved his day with 14 carries, 116 yards, and a touchdown. But his running back day comes at the expense of the actual running back, Mark Ingram, only had 12 carries for 46 yards. They run the zone read pretty much the whole time for the running game out of the pistol. But Seattle just decided to not spy Lamar, which is a bad idea. Mark Andrews had 2 catches for 39 yards. He had a stellar first 4 weeks or so, but these last couple weeks has not been too hot for him. They get a bye, though, this week coming up, so you can't play any of those players, or you shouldn't play any of those players. Seattle has Atlanta next week, but Russ had 241, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Carson had 65 yards and no touchdown, which was a bit rough for him. Lockett had 5 catches, 61 yards, and a touchdown. And then DK Metcalf, I'm just putting him on here. A lot of people like to flex him in deeper leagues especially, but he had 4 catches for 53 yards, but the man had 11 targets. I like to see that target count out of him. Pretty much it's been 4 to 5 targets per game, 2 to 3 catches per game. So the 11 targets is a good sign moving forward. Atlanta has a very burnable defense, so most receivers have been really good against them except for the Rams. I don't know what that was all about. So fire up Lockett, fire up DK as a flex, Carson play him, Russ play him, pretty much with the confidence. Now we'll get into the AFC home games. We'll start with the Thursday night game, which had huge implications for the league going forward. Kansas City won this one 30-6. Broncos need a quarterback. Joe Flacco stood there like a statue and did not move the whole game. It's about time for a fire sale in Denver, or just trade for Cam Newton. I've seen that as a popular conspiracy theory these last couple of weeks, especially with the way Kyle Allen's been playing. Do you bring in Cam after the way Kyle Allen has been playing? Because he's still undefeated in relief duty as well. But Cam in Mile High City would probably elevate them better than Joe Flacco will, because John Elway is not good at picking quarterbacks for some reason. Manning just liked the core that was there already in place. That's why they got Manning. Outside of that, Brock Osweiler, not good. Paxton Lynch, not good. Case Keenum, not good. Trevor Siemian, not good. There's so many other quarterbacks, I just can't name them off the top of my head. So let's actually get into breaking down the game, though. Mahomes, 76 yards, 1 touchdown. But like I said, left the game injured. He's going to be out 3 to 6 weeks. So pretty much the whole team's going to get downgraded with Matt Moore in the lineup. The running back situation's a bit weird with Shady McCoy. He had 64 yards. He had 14 touches. Damian Williams, 7 yards on 11 touches. But his touches were more important because he had 2 goal line carries where Shady had none. I believe Darrell Williams, the other D. Williams, had a goal line carry as well. I'd probably stay away from this backfield until it sorts itself out. But Matt Moore, 117 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He's going to be one of the better backups in the league. He's been extremely experienced, so they can get by. They're not going to be inept. They'll be able to run 80% of the playbook. Hill, Kelsey, still fire up, but these running backs I'd probably stay away from unless you absolutely have to start them. Tyreek Hill, 3 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. Kelsey, 6 catches, 44 yards. They get Green Bay next week, so it's going to be a bit rough for them. But like I said, Hill and Kelsey I'd start. Shady and Williams I'd probably avoid. Denver gets the Colts next week, so they're going to have another tough offensive matchup because they can get to the quarterback. So Flacco, sit him. He had 213 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Really, Sutton's probably the only one you could start as a flex with confidence. Sanders has been up and down. He had 5 catches, 60 yards. Sutton, 6 catches, 87 yards. And then this backfield, it is looking like it's going to be trending towards a hot hand approach. Philip Lindsay had 36 yards with 12 touches. Freeman had 35 yards on the ground, 32 through the air, 1 touchdown on 14 touches. So if you have to flex them, if you have to start them as your running back 1 or 2, you're in a lot more trouble than I can help you with. So I'd avoid this backfield for now. Next game, though, Indy and Texans. It was a battle could take over the AFC South, which in the last, I think it's like 5 or 6 seasons, it's been either the Texans or the Colts winning this, with one outlier for each of the other 2 teams. Texans lost this one 23-30. Indy's looking pretty good with Jacoby Brissett. Doesn't look like they are missing Andrew Luck much. He's looking a lot better, Brissett that is, than he did 2 years ago when he had fill-in duty for Andrew Luck. Deshaun Watson, 308 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson, I'd avoid this backfield as well. Carlos Hyde had 35 yards on 12 touches. Duke Johnson, 34 yards on the ground, 22 through the air on 9 touches. Just outright avoid this backfield. DeAndre Hopkins had a bounce back week, finally. 9 catches, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Will Fuller, 1 catch, 6 yards, left the game injured in the first quarter, never returned. So Kenny Stills is going to be a hot pickup this week. 4 catches, 105 yards. He's going to fill that down the field role. And then let's get into the Colts because they're looking pretty good. Jacoby Brissett, 326, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. If you follow Pat McAfee like I do, he is set on Get Up and his podcast that Colts are going to go win the Super Bowl, and they have a legitimate shot. I can see that. Their defense, if they can get them healthy, it'll be an even better shot. But the Colts offense looks pretty good with Brissett. I was a little wary about them just because of how he was 2 years ago, but it looks like he's matured. He watched Andrew Luck play last year, and just now he's killing it. Marlon Mack, though, only had 44 yards. T.Y. Hilton, 6 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. And then Ebron, 4 catches, 70 yards, and a amazing one-handed touchdown. T.Y. I'd still flex. Ebron is going to be hit or miss. I'd probably sit him next week unless you absolutely have to. But Texans get Oakland. So Stills, Hopkins, and Watson I'd start. I'd avoid their backfield. And then Indy gets Denver. So Brissett start. Marlon Mack I would start. T.Y. I would start. And then Eric Ebron. I'd probably sit him. Next game. Jaguars 27 at Cincinnati Bengals 17. Cincinnati is going for that number 1 pick. And they are going to get it because they need to fire Andy Dalton. Gardner Minshew mania. Not too hot of a day. 255 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Leonard Fournette had a killer day, 131 yards. DJ Chark had a slower day. He's kind of fallen off these last couple of weeks, but I'd still start him moving forward. Leonard Fournette's pretty much a must start unless you have a terrible matchup. Chark had 53 yards through the air, and then he had a 20-yard jet sweep. D.D. Westbrook finally had a good game, 6 catches, 103 yards. And then I put this guy on here, Chris Conley, 3 catches, 83 yards. If something were to happen to Westbrook or Chark, this guy, Chris Conley, would be the one to pick up because he would just fill into that role of getting the ball more often because he's been pretty good this season. It's just Chark and Minshew have an awesome connection. Andy Dalton, like I said, he's done for after this season. Don't see him coming back for Cincinnati. Andy Dalton had 276 through the air, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, but added a rushing touchdown. So, I mean, he could still play. It's just, I don't know if it's a team around him or him, but his time is done. Joe Mixon had a terrible game again, but saved it with a touchdown. He had 2 yards on the ground, 2 yards through the air, and 1 touchdown. So, I mean, he saved it with a touchdown, but he also had a god-awful game. You're still starting him. Why at this point? I don't know why. Tyler Boyd, 5 catches, 55 yards. Alden Tate, 3 catches, 465 yards. And then if you started Austin Erickson, congratulations, because he had 8 catches on 14 targets, which is crazy, for 130 yards. So congratulations on that one. But Jags have Jets next week, so Fournette I would play, Chark I would play, Westbrook I'd probably flex, Conley, like I said, probably just keep him on the waiver wire. And then Cincinnati has the Rams. I'd avoid all of their skill players, really, to be honest with you. Now, from one tanking team to a team that's actually tanking, the Bengals are actually trying. They're not trying to tank, but they just stink, and they've had some terrible matchups. But we're going to go from them to a team that's actually tanking for a quarterback that just got hurt in college. But Miami had 21 points, and they lost to the Bills, who had 31 points. So I don't think a team has put up less than 30 points on them this year. And they finally put up more than 20 points this year. So, hey, that's a good sign for Miami, right? I guess. I don't know. The only Miami Dolphin player, because if you're playing Miami Dolphin players, why? I just want to talk about Fitzpatrick because he had 282 through the air, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and then he had a rushing touchdown. But this rushing touchdown, he literally blew up. I believe it was a linebacker for this touchdown, so he's going to get clowned when they watch film. But they have Pittsburgh next week, and I still wouldn't play any of these Miami Dolphins. The Bills get the Eagles next week, so probably just Josh Allen. Yeah, I still don't trust any of those other players, though. Josh Allen, 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and then he had a 2-point conversion. Frank Gore had 55 yards on 12 touches. Singletary, 26 yards on 7 touches. So backfield not too good. It haven't been that good this year. Frank Gore has had 100 yards once, scored a couple touchdowns. Singletary, I don't think has had more than 100 yards, but he's had 2 or 3 touchdowns. So not too terrible, but still avoid it. John Brown scored his second touchdown of the year. 5 catches, 83 yards. I mean, it's just not too exciting with these Bills receivers. It's just meh. As my sister says, meh. That's just how I feel about the Bills receivers. But Beasley, 3 catches, 16 yards, 1 touchdown. I thought he'd have a bigger role. But like I said, Bills is just meh. And then this next game, like I said, I will not go on a rant, but Chargers lost this one to the Titans 20-23. Chargers get the Bears next week. So at this point, anything can happen because Bears offense is terrible. Their defense is trying their best to keep them in games. Chargers offense is all right. They seem inept at times, but their defense can't catch a cold. They can't tackle anything. They couldn't tackle somebody in a phone booth at this point because their tackling has been terrible. Philip Rivers, though, had his typical game, 329 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And then here's where we get into kind of the weeds of it. Flash Gordon, so Melvin Gordon, 32 yards on the ground on 16 carries, so not very good. I mean, the Titans' defense is pretty good. They're in the top half of the defenses. So, I don't expect much from him next week just because they're the Chargers. I don't expect much from them for the rest of the year. I probably would sit him against the Bears. He did have a receiving touchdown, so that helped out your day, but he also had a fumble that could have won us the game, so he screwed us again. So sit Gordon. Eckler, though, he is still on a rampage. 7 yards on the ground, not rampagey. Just stick with me. But he had 118 through the air, 1 touchdown. They were picking on linebackers all day with him. He had 12 touches. I'd still play Austin Eckler going forward. I mean, why would you not at this point? Even with Melvin Gordon back, he has still shown that he's the better back in this backfield. Who knows what the Chargers are going to do with Melvin Gordon at the end of the year. My bet is they franchise tag him and he holds out, and then we're dealing with this again next year. Hunter Henry, 6 catches, 97 yards. I like that from the big fella. Going forward, I'd start him going forward continuously. Keenan Allen, 4 catches, 61 yards. However, he did have 11 targets. So the target share is still there. You have to start him with that target share because if he catches on, at least, 4 more of those passes, he's at 100 yards. So he's still there. I wish he'd get more red zone looks, but with Eckler, Gordon, Hunter Henry, and Mike Williams, his red zone targets are going to be few and far between. Mike Williams had 4 catches, 47 yards. He's going to fall off pretty bad from that 10 touchdown year he had last year. Chargers as a team, though, is falling off. So, like I said, they get the Bears next week. I mean, Eckler, I would definitely start. Hunter Henry, I would start. Keenan Allen, I would start. Rivers, if he's your only option, definitely start him. But if you have a backup, depending on who your backup is, depending on who the matchup is, go with that. But if not, I mean, they just got torched by Teddy Two Glove, so they're making me start to question that defense because it's Oakland Raiders and Saints now 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks in a row. It's 3 weeks because of the bye. I don't know with the freaking Chargers anymore, to be honest with you. Gordon definitely sit. Mike Williams sit. Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Austin Eckler, and Philip Rivers. Go ahead and fire it up. Go ahead and start them. Titans get the Bucks next week, so their defense. I mean, last time we saw Winston, he had, 5, 6 interceptions? 5 interceptions, 6 turnovers. So Titans defense, go ahead and fire them up. Heck, even Tannehill looked really good. 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Derrick Henry, so-so day, 90 yards and a touchdown. And then their receivers, nobody really started their receivers, but Corey Davis, 6 catches, 80 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown, 6 catches, 64 yards. I'd still avoid their receivers, probably avoid Delaney Walker. Derrick Henry definitely start. Tannehill, depending on who you have back there, he could be a streaming option next week. So that's it for all of the game breakdowns. Actually, the game just went final, so let me pull up those stats real quick. I will be right back after a quick break. All righty, we are back from our little break. Let's just insert your own music here because we don't have music just yet. We are definitely working on that though. So hopefully, in the next coming months, we'll have some intro music and whatnot for you guys. But got all these stats looked up now for the Cowboys-Phillies game. Cowboys walked away with this one, it looks like 37-10. Dallas now goes on a bye week, and Philly goes to the Bills next week. So Bills, pretty good defense. I could see the Bills winning that one, so I'd probably sit Carson Wentz, Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders. I'd probably sit. I wouldn't play a Philly player unless you had to. Carson Wentz, 191 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Jordan Howard looks like he had 50 yards on the ground, added 6 through the air. Miles Sanders, 21 yards on the ground, 11 through the air. Let's see. Jordan Howard had 11 carries. So he still had 13 touches. Sanders had 9. So still in Jordan Howard's favor. So still avoid the backfield situation there. Dallas Goedert, nobody's playing him though, because, why would you at this point? He's actually the better tight end this year, so we might look into it. 4 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. Alshon Jeffrey, 2 catches, 38 yards, and no touchdown. Zach Ertz, 2 catches, 38 yards, no touchdown. Nelson Aguilar, 2 catches, 24 yards, no touchdown. Yeah, just a rough night for Philly, it looks like. Dak Prescott, 239, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Looks like he added 30 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Zeke, 111 yards and a touchdown. Looks like Tavon Austin actually got in. 1 carry, 20 yards, and a touchdown. Tavon Austin sighting. We haven't seen him do much in the last couple of years outside of those, 2 or 3 really good years he had with the Rams while they were still St. Louis. Receiving wise, Elliott added an extra 36 yards. Gallup, he was a pretty good lock of the week for a lot of people. 3 catches, 34 yards, no touchdowns. Amari Cooper, 5 catches, 106 yards, no touchdown. There was a Jason Witten sighting, 4 catches, 33 yards, a long of 10. That was probably 10 minutes to get those 10 yards because he is a slow old man. And then Blake Jarwin, gotta love these. 1 target, 1 catch for 1 yard for 1 touchdown. Gotta love those tight end numbers, always screwing everything up for everybody. So, yeah, we kind of broke it down. Philly, I'd probably avoid most of their players unless you have to play them. And then Dallas goes on a bye, so can't really break down there next week for you. But let's go into some trade calls now. I would trade away David Johnson. At this point, that's 3 weeks in a row. Well, 2 weeks before this week, Chase Edmonds has started to eat into his workload. And then this week, he had 1 carry. So unless he is, practicing fully every week, I would just trade him away. You might be able to fetch a decent return for him, not anything too crazy because he's not that back that he was before he dislocated his wrist 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. Yeah, trade him away. See what you can get in return if you're hurting for some receivers, tight end maybe, quarterback. But he is my trade away player of the week. My trade for player is going to be multiple players, which is going to be any Jets player. The main guys, Darnold, Bell, Anderson, Crowder, and Herndon. So this is the remaining schedule for the Jets players. They get Jacksonville, Miami twice, Giants, Washington, Oakland, Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh. That is a hell of a stretch for the Jets. If they can pull off this win against New England this week, which I have them set as an upset pick for tomorrow, they might be able to sneak into the playoffs, which is surprising because, Jaguars, middle of the road. Miami, twice, not too good. Giants, middle of the road. Washington, not too good. Oakland, middle of the road. Oakland, Cincinnati, not too good. Baltimore, middle of the road. Pittsburgh, just shy of middle of the road. So it's a pretty decent stretch. So I would trade for Jets players or pick them up on the waiver wire and play them because, that's an awesome stretch going for the rest of the year. Let's go into some waiver wire targets. We're going to have a little bit more than we normally do just because I'm going to give you a couple quarterbacks to possibly look for. Baltimore and Dallas are going on bye, so we're not losing too many players just yet. But first guy up is going to be Ty Johnson, Detroit running back. Kerryon Johnson left, came back with a knee brace, so monitor his process, his practices going forward, his health going forward. Next guy is going to be Kenny Stills. With Fuller being out, Kenny Stills is going to fill that role. Like I said before, Fuller is going to be extremely injury prone, so can't really rely on him much. Next guy is going to be, if you're not the number 1 or number 2, or if those guys are sleeping, number 3 waiver priority, or if you don't have a lot of money, this guy's going to be gone. But Chase Edmonds, like I said before, not including this week, 2 weeks prior, he had been cutting into David Johnson's workload, and now a seemingly healthy David Johnson sat, and they played him, and he balled out for 3 touchdowns. Granted, it was against the Giants, and Arizona has a shy-away schedule. They play New Orleans, San Francisco, I believe the bye week, and then San Francisco again. So stretch isn't that good, but Edmonds has been working into that starting role, and now bam, bell cow role with a seemingly healthy David Johnson. Danny Amendola, like I said before, he's looking like now that he's healthy, he's sliding back into that Golden Tate role. Fire him up as a flex. Herndon, pick him up, sit him until he's fully healthy, and then a decent tight end for a killer backstretch of the season. And then let's get into some quarterbacks now. So this is kind of where we're going to be with, Matt Ryan being out, bye weeks, and then with Patrick Mahomes being out. Granted, he's probably not there, but he has a decent matchup next week. Goff, if he is available, some people have shied away from him. I know in 2 of my leagues he's on the waiver. I know he's owned in like 80% of leagues, so he's probably not going to be there. But if he is there, Goff is looking pretty good. Cousins is owned in about 60% of the leagues. Like I said, he has Washington this week, short week, pretty good matchup. And then the rest of the guys are going to be below 50% owned in the leagues. Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold, hell of a stretch coming on the backside of New England. And then if you're in a bind, if there's nobody else, Mason Rudolph has a decent stretch. Not the Jets stretch, not as good as that stretch, but it's a decent stretch. So if he's the only option, Rudolph is available. He has a decent stretch coming up. So that's going to be it for the show today. Sorry about the lackluster kind of flow to this thing because it was just a rough football week because the football gods hate me. But we'll pick it back up again next week. It was a weird week. It had a weird vibe this whole week for football wise. So we'll get back into the swing of things. But as always, follow us on Instagram, Slumpbuster Pod. Follow us on Slumpbuster Pod is on Twitter, Slumpbuster Podcast on Instagram, Slumpbuster FFB on Twitter as well. The website slumpbuster.com. We have our weekly rankings, power rankings, and we have some articles there as well. As always, like, rate, subscribe, review, share, download, everything. Tell all your friends about us. We do have some happy customers on Twitter because we've helped them win some games this year. So we do kind of know what we're talking about. Our teams, me and Andre, that not too good just because, you know, they are what they are. The Chargers are tanking this year apparently, and you know, it's kind of a wash for the Pittsburgh Steelers because Big Ben's hurt. But we're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. So, you know, it's a long season. We're almost halfway done. Fantasy, you know, is going to be pretty much, unless we get a huge injury, it's going to pretty much start to level off. So we're going to have a special episode for you guys coming up as well, where we're all going to get together, the Slumpbuster media, kind of recap our preseason rankings and stuff like that, and see where everybody's kind of falling at the mid-season point. So look for that coming forward. As always, make sure you talk I don't know if we can say that. Make sure you talk crap to all your fantasy mates, because that's what it's all about. And, you know, continue to kill it for the season. So you guys have a great rest of your night, and we will see you on our next episode.
Thanks once again to our listeners for joining us. Be sure to check out theslumpbuster.com for Aris's weekly ranks. But be tuned to our website as we're going to be posting rest of the season rankings as well. Follow us on Instagram at Slumpbuster Podcast, on Twitter at Slumpbuster Pod, and our fantasy football Twitter at Slumpbuster FFB for more information and weekly start sit recommendations. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.